So today we're talking the Glamour, Christopher Priest. Before I start, it's worth adding, those of you who have watched a lot of my videos will I think know this pretty obviously, but for those that don't, these aren't in any way structured or planned. It's just typically I would have recently finished a book and I will say whatever comes to my head when I turn the camera on. And annoyingly, for this one, I haven't read it. It's been a while since I've read it. It was maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks. So the thoughts are not as kind of fresh, but I think there's still quite a lot to say about this one. So I thought it'd be worthwhile making a video anyway. So yeah, there's two versions as I understand of the text. Priest revised some bits, and I think this is the more modern version, which, from what I've read, people seem to think is the weaker version. I need to look into exactly what is different, but apparently broadly they're broadly the same. It's not a huge difference between the two texts. I think it's like one section that is differently written, but the message is the same. So this is the third Christopher Priest book I've read. I've also read The Affirmation and Inverted World. Both of those I liked. I didn't love, but I liked. And there was this. There's a couple of things. So the way he writes it's really simplistic and easy to follow, and yet there's kind of a sharpness or an edge to how he writes, um, which slightly puts me off, and I think it's deliberate. I think, like, he's obviously a very skillful writer, but it has put me off. And actually, I didn't notice it as much in this third book, which in the Glamour, as I did compared to the other books. But I don't like his dialogue in general. It reads a bit. It just doesn't feel very realistic. I can't really explain it, except that some text, when you're reading it, you almost feel like, if you kind of suspend your disbelief and almost forget you're reading, you could picture yourself these two people having a conversation, and as if you're a fly on the wall and these are two genuine people having a genuine conversation. For me, I don't quite know why, but the way Priest writes his dialogue, I'm very aware that it's a book and that he is trying to convey something about the way that they're talking. So, he's trying to drive the plot forward, or this section of dialogue is more characterization about this, or it sort of breaks the fourth wall without meaning to break the fourth wall. I think, like, I'm very aware I'm reading a book. That's probably just a me thing. He's obviously a very skillful writer, and it may just be something, some weird subconscious thing in the back of my head that's picking it up. But I found that I'd be interested to see if anyone else thought the same. So comparing this against the other two books, I think this is the superior. Inverted World, I don't know if I talked about it. I did read it relatively recently, but I'm not sure if I talked about it. It starts, one of those the most famous opening lines in science fiction. It's something like, I've reached the age of 360 miles. And the story is compelling, kind of slightly disconcerting, but like powerful world building, a mystery in and of itself that has a resolution at the end, but it's very clearly science fiction. It is, it isn't. There are recognizable traits of it, but it is an alien world. There is something going on. It doesn't feel like the world that we know. The Affirmation is much more kind of grounded, much more familiar, but again, kind of follows that. There's a mystery. There's something going on. There's something not quite right. There's a disconcerting feel to it as well, and there's a revelation of sorts at the end that kind of makes you think. It doesn't necessarily resolve it completely. Neither does Inverted World, but there is an end, and that end kind of gets you thinking, and in some senses answers some questions, but leaves some other questions open. The Glamour is much more familiar, it's much more familiar. It's much more similar in feel to the Affirmation. It is mostly plausible, although not all of it is. But I could see people arguing it wasn't really science fiction. Um, I think that's not the case. I think you can quite firmly place the Glamour in science fiction, but it is more like a ballad. It's more like it has the feel of those kind of new wave where the the world is as you expect it to be, mostly with some kind of tweaks and elements around the side, a bit like Silverberg as well. The ending is interesting. I don't think it's a spoiler to say, that the ending is the most powerful bit, and probably the bit that people will talk about, and very in line with all the other Christopher Priest books I've read, and I imagine kind of what you get with Christopher Priest in general. I suspect most of the books I read would follow that structure and that format of mystery into sort of what you would consider a resolution at the end. If you go online and read people's opinions on the ending, people will say it's got a neat, clear resolution, and I just don't agree with that at all. I think the ending is very ambiguous. It leaves a lot open for discussion and thought and debate, and I can fully appreciate that I have missed something, or I'm trying to read into things that aren't there. But I don't think I am. I would say that, but I think the ending is complex and ambiguous, and doesn't really leave you feeling satisfied in a good way, in a way that kind of makes you think about potential other endings. I would be very, very interested if there is anyone who knows this book well, who would want to talk to me about that. I don't want to really go into the ending, because it sort of, I think, would really limit your appreciation for the book. The book has the book isn't just about the ending as well. Like the book is in some ways just absolutely brilliant. Kind of experiments with different writing styles. So some of it is told in the third person, some of it's told in the first person, some of it's told in the second person. It's told from different perspectives that all mesh into the story itself, and there is there's an unreliable narrator element kind of going through it. You know that something's not quite right, but it's difficult to figure out what that is. The book apparently is compared a lot to Memento, which is one of my favourite films, and it and I think that's Christopher Nolan, I think, who ended up directing The Prestige, which I haven't read, but is obviously Priest's most well known one because of that film. And it follows a chap who he's a news journalist. He's involved in a very serious accident. You find out what that accident is later, but at the start of the book, you don't know what that is. And he is in for want of a better word, a kind of a care setting. He has lost some of his memory. Sort of, I think it's 6 months prior to this accident happening, he loses his memory, and he is trying to piece together what happened, why he lost his memory. He's speaking to two different psychiatrists or psychologists to try and help him resolve this, and they have differing styles and beliefs on how best to get him better. And he then comes into contact with a lady who seeks him out himself, who claims to be his girlfriend, prior to this happening, but he has no real recollection of who she is, and he's trying to piece things together from there. I won't say more than that, but I do think you should read it. The story kind of gets more layered, more complex. It's difficult to know what the truth is, and the last maybe 30, 40 pages, I had chills reading it. It was powerful. I haven't really felt that way about it, but for a while actually, it really had an impact on me. It was about 1 a.m. when I finished it, and I remember I just couldn't sleep. I was like, I had to kind of look up and see what was going on, see what other people thought, and kind of collate my thoughts as to what I thought had happened. I still don't think I've solved it or resolved it yet. So it's one of the cleverest books as well in terms of structuring. I don't necessarily think Priest's strength, Priest's top strength is his prose styling. He's a very good writer, but and he goes for simplicity, which is great, and he has that kind of sharp edge that I talked about, which is stylistically, I think, unique. But where he really shines, I think, is in his structuring and layering, and you can just tell the book is so well plotted, so well thought through, that it is something I think so compelling that everyone should read. So definitely give it a go.